Hi there, my name's Cathi from Software Solutions, and this is video 17 in a collection of videos that go with my Microsoft Excel The Essentials course. Now this particular video is looking at how you format your spreadsheet so it looks good. We're using the file Excel1 that comes with the course notes, and I've saved it as my first name, which is Cathi. I've then gone to a sheet called Formatting, as you can see on my screen here. And what I want to do is walk through the most common types of formatting you would use in a spreadsheet. Now what we have on the left hand side in column A are some instructions in the grey cells. And the first instruction says apply the font Times New Roman to the range B3 to D3. So the first thing I'd recommend is that you select the cells B3 to D3. Now with your mouse, as you rest on various buttons, it actually describes and names each button. So you're looking for a button called font. This is font color, this is font size, and this button is font, which is the style of text. What we have is a font called Arial currently applied, but if you hit the drop down, you'll see there's a lot of fonts in Excel, all affecting the way that the text looks. We want Times New Roman, so that begins with the letters TI. So I'm going to type TI, and there I see the font Times New Roman. If I click it, I've effectively applied the font Times New Roman to the range B3 to D3. So that's the first instruction done. The next instruction says apply the font size 14 to B4 to D4. So let's start by selecting B4 to D4. And then again, by resting on various buttons, let's look for the button called font size. And here it is here. The font size is currently 10, but the exercise wants you to make it 14. So we'll change this to 14. The larger the font size, the bigger the writing. The next instruction says apply bold. So I'm going to select these three cells. Now I'm going to select these three cells a little differently now. I'm going to try avoiding my mouse all the time, using my mouse all the time. So I've clicked on July and I'm holding the shift key and I'll press the right arrow twice. And so shift right arrow actually selects cells to the right of where I'm sitting. With those three cells selected, I could then look for the bold button, which is this button with a B on it. Now notice also the shortcut key is Control B when you rest on this button. So I could either click the button and turn the bold on, which makes them stand out more, and click the button and turn the bold off. Or I could press Control B to turn the bold on and Control B to turn the bold off. So I'm going to turn the bold on with Control B. Next instruction says apply italics to the range B6 to D6. I'm going to click on B6, hold the shift key, hit the right arrow twice, let the shift key go, and now I'm looking for italics. This button here with an I on it is italics, which basically makes your text look slopey. So I'm going to turn on the italics and you can see how it slopes. And then I can click it again to turn off the italics. Again, notice the shortcut key is Control I. So I might press Control I to turn the italics on. The next instruction says apply underline to B7 to D7. So I'll click on B7, hold the shift, press the right arrow twice, let the shift go, and this button here with the U is underline. Notice the shortcut key is Control U, but notice also there's a drop down. You can choose underline or double underline. I just need underline, so I'm just going to choose underline. And it underlines Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Notice it doesn't underline the cell, it underlines the word. So if you want to underline the cell, then that's actually using borders, which we're coming up to shortly. But when you want to underline the words, then you use the underline button. Alright, the next instruction says left align B8 to D8. Shift right arrow, they're currently centered, and it wants me to left align them. I can see the center's actually got a green shadow on it. And so we're going to make it left align by clicking this button here. The next instruction, click on Sunday, hold the shift key, tap the right arrow, is to center these three cells, which are currently aligned to the left. This button here, if you rest on it, will center the content in the cell. So that centers within a cell. The next instruction says select B10 to D10, and it wants you to right align those cells. So that's the third option out of these three, this one being left, this one being centered, and ultimately this one's now right, which is what we need. Okay. Next instruction, row 11. Merge and center the text across the range B11 to D11. So you highlight B11 to D11, and what we want to do is not center in a cell, but center across cells and merge those three cells into one big cell. And so this is your merge and center button. If you click this button, you'll combine and center the contents in a new larger cell. And that's exactly what merge and center is done. If I click it again, you'll unmerge. And if I hit the drop down, you'll notice there's a few options in here. But I'm just going to choose merge and center again. And so that's row 11 completed. Now let's look at row 12. Row 12 says apply the currency style to the range B12 to D12. So I select B12 to D12, shift right arrow, and currency is not this button. This button is actually accounting. So for currency, we go up to here and we choose currency, just above accounting. Now if you choose currency, you'll notice that the dollar sits close to the number. But if I was to choose accounting, the dollar is further away from the number. So people tend to choose which one they like. But if I'm going to follow the instructions, I need to choose currency. The next instruction says apply the percent style. So I click on B13, shift right arrow, and the percent style could be achieved with this button here. You could go into here, that's definitely an option, but you've also got a button here which also mentions the shortcut key, Control-Shift-%. But I'm just going to click the button, and so that will multiply each of these numbers by 100 and stick a percent sign. The next instruction says apply the comma style to B14 to D14. So we select these three cells. The comma style is this button here. It basically puts a comma every thousandth, a decimal point, and two decimal places. And that's what you see there. Sometimes having lots of dollars all around the place is too busy, so we use comma in certain examples. This group of three cells here, it would like you to increase the decimal places to 4, like an exchange rate. Well, if you rest on this button is increase. This increases it to 2, 3, and now 4 decimal places. So that's the increase decimal places button. The next instruction in row 16 asks you to decrease the decimal places to 0. So I'll select these three cells, and this button here is used to decrease the decimal places. If I click it once, I'm down to 1 decimal place. If I click it again, I'm down to 0 decimal places. The next instruction, row 17, wants you to indent these three cells. Now what indent means is to push them in a little bit. It's not acceptable to go space, 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 space when you want to indent something. Nowadays we work with proportional fonts, and the amount of space that, say, a W takes as opposed to the letter I is very different. And so often when you use spaces to indent things, you can't get things to line up because of the number of or the type of characters you've chosen. So if you ever want to push something in a little bit, don't go space, space, space. Use this button. This is the increase indent button. When I click it, it indents them. If I click it again, it indents them even further and further and further to the right. And this one here brings them back to the left. Let me give you an example of the indent. I'll just go over here. Imagine you had a spreadsheet where you had the heading assets. And then under the heading assets, you wanted to list your assets. And they were plant, they were equipment, they were cash, and then you had a subheading, total assets. So now this has been indented, so we want to push this back. Now, if I wanted to indent these three to make sure that they appeared to be under assets in a subheading under assets, then you would just simply use the increase indent. And that looks much better than going space, space, space. And you could increasingly indent them until you were happy. And then we could widen the column. And so that's an example there of indenting text and outdenting text. Okay, next instruction, row 19. Apply a double bottom border to the range B19 to D19. Now borders are this button here. If you go into this button, there's a variety of borders. You could ask for just a bottom border, or just a top border, or just a left or a right. You could ask for all borders to be applied, or just a thick outside border, or a bottom double, or a thick bottom, or a top and a thick bottom. There's all sorts of different types of borders you can ask for. I'm just going to ask for a bottom double. And if I click away so I can actually see what that looks like, I can see there's a double line at the bottom of each of those three cells, much like a ledger where you've got totals and subtotals. Okay, let's apply a background color to each one of these cells. So this is the bucket with a little bit of yellow. The bucket is fill color, also known as background color, and I'm going to go for red. So that's a red fill color. If I click on yellow here and go for yellow, that's a yellow fill color, and this one's to have a grey fill color. So this button here is basically fill color, which is the background color to all the cells to make them stand out. Now we have text color. If I click on this cell, the A is font color. And so if I hit the drop down, I can choose red. Oops, red. And if I click this one, I can make the text go green. And if I click this one, I can make the text go blue. So you can add color to your text. Now we have something they call superscript. I say to the kids, superscript is like Superman. It lifts stuff up. So if you had an O and you lifted it up, you'd effectively end up with a degree symbol. If you had a 2 and you lifted it up with superscript, then you'd have squared. And if you had a 3 and you lifted it up, you'd have cubed. So let me show you how you can do this. Now in Excel, if I wanted to make this O superscript, I would double click on the cell and I would select, just by dragging, I would select the O only to the right of the 90. I would then right click and go into format cells. And from there you can turn on superscript, which lifts things up. And if I click OK, oops, OK, then I've got a degree symbol and I can just click away to see that. So anything that you drag over, right click and format cells, you can apply superscript to. But what if you want just a quick way to call up a degree symbol or a squared or a cubed? There's a variety of other options and I need to make sure that you're aware of these. You could go insert and you could go symbol. And there are a whole lot of symbols in here, especially if your font is normal text. And so symbols would include things like a divide, or include things like, let's look for the degrees and squared. There is a squared, there's a cube, there's a degree. So there's various symbols that you can insert. But it's quite painful to go insert symbol every time you want a degree sign. For some people, not necessarily all of them. So I'm going to go cancel and show you yet another way. Now this way will only work if you have a number pad on your keyboard. So if I want 360 degrees, I'll type 360. I'll hold the Alt key and on the number pad I'll press 0176 and I'll let the Alt key go. And that's a way that you can get degrees. Alt 0176 is degrees. In fact, let me just go over here and write that. Alt 0176, Alt 0176 is degrees. Alt 0178, Alt 0178 is squared. Alt 0179, Alt 0179 is cubed. Now, some of you might think, well, I'm never going to remember that. And that's fair cop. But if you're doing degrees, squared or cubed a lot, you probably will remember them, even if you stick it on a post-it sticker and stick it near your screen until you do. And I think why I like those shortcut keys is they work in Outlook, they work in Word, they work in Excel, they work in PowerPoint, they work pretty much anywhere. Paint, Microsoft Paint. So it's nice to learn one way that works everywhere. And your degrees and your cubed and your squares always look consistent because they're quite a bit smaller, I find, than the one that is here. So that's one way. And where I got those from, just so you know, is I'm just going to hit my start button and I'm just going to type CHAR. There is an app that comes with Windows 11, 10, all of them, called Character Map. It's been around for a very long time. And if I click on Character Map, that's actually where I got them. So I bring up the Character Map. Let me just bring that into view. It's gone onto my other screen. Here it is here. And if I click on the degree, that's where I got the Alt 0176 from. And I click on the cube, that's where I got the Alt 0179 from, for cubed. So if there are certain characters that you use on a regular basis that you think, oh, I really just want to hit a key in Excel, I just want to hit a shortcut key combination, and it just inserts it for me, then maybe go and have a look at the character map and find that symbol and find what its shortcut key is. Just an idea. I'm going to close that. But there is actually another way that you can insert symbols and actually emojis and all sorts of other types of characters as well. On your keyboard, there's actually a Windows key. Let me just bring this up. The Windows key. Now, when you press the Windows key and full stop, you get symbols and emojis. So let me just write this. Windows key and full stop. And if I click here and go Windows full stop, see, this comes up. So what you've got here is emojis in this area here. You've got all sorts of emojis, and I can go back. You've also got GIFs, all sorts of GIFs in here, and I can search for what I'm looking for, and I can go back. You've also got sort of Kaimojis, and here you've got symbols. So if I go into symbols, there's things like squared, degrees, which I've recently used. So it starts to keep a record of recently used symbols. And as I go down, you'll find that there's all sorts of symbols that you could just quickly insert if you went Windows full stop. So I want you to have a look around there as well. There's sort of currency symbols and Latin symbols, which is lots of different types of macrons, and there's geometric symbols, etc. And I'll go back. And as I scroll down, yeah, I can see my most recent. So if I had actually gone like this and gone 180, and then I wanted a degree symbol, Windows full stop, I would just go down to my most recent and choose the degree symbol, and I can see it's already inserted it, so I can just click away. So that's another way that you could get degrees, squared and cubed, and those are the main superscript characters that we deal with. And that Windows key and full stop works in all programs, and these Alt combinations work in all programs. We're dragging over the O, right-clicking, choosing Format, Cells, and choosing Superscript is only Excel. So these are generic. Okay, let's move along. Next thing we have here in row 23 is it says, can you please apply 90-degree text orientation to B23 to D23. I'm going to go back to my Home tab in my ribbon, and text orientation is this AB going up the hill orientation. Rotate your text diagonally or vertically. It's a great way to label narrow columns. So if I click this button, I could choose, say, angle counterclockwise, and that looks quite funky, putting it on a 45-degree angle. But it actually doesn't want a 45. The instruction is for a 90-degree. So I'm going to go back to my orientation and choose rotate text up. And that just puts your labels from being 0 degrees straight up to 90 degrees, which means that if you had skinny numbers and long headings, put your headings up 90 degrees, you can bring your column widths in, and that can make the difference from about being able to print it on one page instead of two. Okay, so that's text orientation. The next instruction is wrap text. So if I choose these three, what we want to do is use this option here. Now before I do that, let's just read that it wraps extra long text onto multiple lines. So if I look at this cell, it says sales figures F, but if I look up here, it says sales figures for 1998. So I've got extra long text in here, and I'm actually not seeing all the text. And I don't want to make the columns wider because I'm trying to get it to fit on one page. So another way to get columns to show all the heading but not increase the column width is to wrap the text onto multiple lines. So I'm going to do that. And there you see it there. Instead of increasing the column width, actually wrap the text to multiple lines. So it's on 2 lines now. Now there is actually another way to wrap text, and I need to explain that to you. So I'm just going to go over here. Let's say I wanted to control the point at which my text wrapped. Okay, let's do this. Sales figures for 2023. Okay, my heading is really long. I don't want to make the column any wider, so my only option is to wrap the text. So I choose this button here, and that puts it on 2 lines. But if I increase the width of this column, it's now wrapping at a different point. Now it's wrapping at a different point. Now it's wrapping at a different point. I actually don't like the way that it's not sort of like always wrapping at a certain point. I might decide I want to see sales on one line, figures on the second line, 4 on the third line, and 2023 on the fourth line. Sales, Alt, Enter. Don't go Enter. Hold the Alt key and go Enter. Figures, Alt, Enter. 4, Alt, Enter, 2023. By using Alt, Enter, you are putting a carriage return or a new line inside of a cell, and it will always show that heading on 4 lines, not 2 or 1 depending on the column width. And so I could center that, and I could resize the column, and it would still always be on 4 lines. Whereas this one, sometimes it's on 3 lines, sometimes it's on 2 lines, sometimes it's on 1 line. But this one will always be on 4 lines. So Alt Enter means you want a new line inside the same cell. Now if you want to edit that as well, if you're sitting on this cell, the formula bar is normally where we can go to edit things. You'll notice on the right hand side there's a V, and that V lets you expand the formula bar. And when you expand it, you can change things like 2022 to 2023. And so if I want to edit things, I'll expand my formula bar so that I can see the multiple lines, and I can make changes on the particular line I want to change. And then I can collapse my formula bar when I'm finished. So just taking that wrap text to a next level. Okay. The 25th and final line says use the format painter to copy formatting from one cell, that is B25, to a range of cells, which is A3 to A25. So we click on B25, which has got this blue, yellow, bold sort of appearance. And we go up to here in our ribbon, and under cut and copy is the format painter. It says like the look of a particular selection, B25, then select the content with the formatting you like, click the format painter, and select something else to automatically apply that look to something else. So I'm going to hit my format painter, and now my mouse is a paintbrush, and I'm going to drag from A25 up and paint the blue and yellow look onto these grey cells. And so I've used the format painter to paint this look onto those cells. So that's an exercise that introduces you to a lot of the very common types of formatting options that people use in Excel. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope there was a few tricks that you enjoyed there. I might just give the enter key a little bit of a nod actually, just before you go. If I was to press enter, let me just put this in capitals. If I was to press enter, then I go down. So every time I press enter, I go down. If I was to press shift enter, then I go up. So shift enter goes up. If I was to press alt enter, then I would get a new line in the same cell. So here's an example. Type alt enter a second line. So alt enter lets you put things on more than one line. And then lastly, control enter fills all the selected cells. So if I select all of these cells and I want to fill them all with zeros, I type 0 but I don't press enter because enter goes down. I press control enter to fill all the selected cells with what I just typed. So that's just a nod to the enter key. There's quite a bit to the enter key. I hope you liked the video. Please like or subscribe. Come back for the next video where I take you through some tips and tricks in getting things to print properly, which can be a real challenge when you've got over 1 million rows and over 16,000 columns. See you soon. Bye.